What's up, ladies and gentlemen, all wrestling fans out there? This is the RSN podcast once again. This is Rich. We have Sal.
What's up, guys?
We have Nick.
How's it going?
On today's episode of the RSN podcast, we're going to be doing another shoot. For those who don't know what a shoot is, Nick, would you like to explain what a shoot basically is?
Yes, in layman's terms, and for pro wrestling, a shoot is basically something that appears to be realistic, usually thriving off shock value to get its point across. Um, we're gonna basically follow that kind of format, shooting off on current events happening in pro wrestling right now. For anyone who's been following WWE, TNA, Ring of Honor, it's been a big year for all three companies in three very different ways, both good and bad. So the three of us are going to quote unquote shoot the breeze, as they call it. Going over a lot of recent stuff and things that are cooking up because we got Survivor Series coming up, and that's probably going to be a big stack card. So we'll be talking about all that fun stuff, and I'll throw it back to you.
All right, so to start this shoot podcast, let's start with the topic that is basically going to lead into the feuding at Survivor Series. We're going to start with the fallout from Hell in a Cell. Sal, would you like to start us off?
Sure, yeah, I definitely like to. I mean, the whole Hell in a Cell pay-per-view, it was a really cool lineup. It started off really, really good. You've seen the return of Del Rio, which kind of set a blow to AAA and Lucha, because now that's obviously a spoiler. We're not gonna see Del Rio and Lucha anymore, which is kind of blows a little bit. That's kind of like, oh wow, that's fucked up. But I guess WWE, they need the new, the next Hispanic star, and they got it right there. And that's the best choice for them, you know. But I mean, in addition to that, we've seen a lot more stuff. We've seen Taker and with Brock Lesnar. Brock Lesnar won, no big surprise. And then who ended up coming out? Bray Wyatt came with the Wyatt family to take him out, and boom, what's happened from there? A lot of stuff happened in between, but I guess not that much really happened. We could say that it was kind of a lenient pay-per-view. Not that much really came out of it, but there was times where it shocked us. Sometimes where it was kind of like, oh, like the fuck is going on? You know? What would you guys rate this pay-per-view as a whole?
I don't know. Are we doing a 1 to 10?
Yeah,
rating?
I guess 1 to 10. Yeah, I mean, for me personally, I'd say probably it would be like an 8 to 10, simply because of the fact Del Rio came out, because I never expected that.
I'd give it a 6.
6.
Yeah, I'd have to factor in the lack of proper build headed into the show. It didn't really sound like that big of a card. Taker Lesnar did happen to steal the show, but where was the hype for that match, really? You had Paul Heyman come out and hype it a little bit. You had a little bit of a Taker Lesnar tease, but let's be honest, Taker Lesnar was like the hottest thing headed into SummerSlam. I mean, that build for that match was insane, but we had the brawl, constant video hype, about as good as a showdown as you could make it look like. We had that headed into SummerSlam. We didn't really have that with Hell in a Cell. First, they announced the match in a video package, and
It
it
was
was
the
kind of just
Go to Hell tour.
yeah, and then they just kept replaying that video like over 3 or 4 weeks, and it wasn't until maybe about
And
two
I
weeks
think
before the
Taker,
actual, yeah, that
Taker
day.
did one promo and that was it.
Yeah. So the build for that match was terrible. The only thing that saved it was the fact that they were able to use the Hell in the Cell environment and all the blood and all of that to really give us a proper throwback to the more violent days. And, Vince McMahon and Kevin Dunn got upset backstage, so it worked out really well. And
It's
then,
hard to kind of upset Vince nowadays.
yeah, it's pretty easy to do.
But from what I heard, they didn't have a lot of heat on Brock, because Brock, if you've seen that match, they're saying that he bladed again, supposedly, which he didn't, because when he hit into that post, he legit was bleeding. They're saying probably Taker bled.
Me and you were talking about that at work.
Yeah, we're saying that.
And I brought that up to you because if you watch his matches for the past year, he's bleeding from the same exact spot.
True.
Taker hasn't. I can't even tell you the last time I remember Taker bleeding in a match.
True. I mean, if you also look at the record that they've had, did you know that Taker was actually, if you look at Taker and Lesnar's rivalry, Lesnar has the most victories over Taker in any event. If you go back in the Backlash days, if you go back in the Ruthless Aggression era, when they had Hell in a Cell matches, biker chain matches, Lesnar always won. But here's another thing. You never saw Taker bleed. All you saw mostly was just a battered, beaten Brock Lesnar. But, with Taker, when it came to Hell in a Cell matches and Lesnar always came out on top. And I think the only time that he actually did win in this whole rivalry was at SummerSlam with that whole fixed victory that they had, with Taker giving a low blow. So that's kind of interesting.
So can you basically say Lesnar is the only wrestler to have a winning record against Taker?
I agree. Yeah, I think the same. Yeah, I'd say that's probably the biggest thing that came out of that, because you never really seen anyone else do that to Taker before. Bring up any name. Edge. Batista. Is there really anybody
Triple H.
They've had
Shawn Michaels.
Yeah, they've had memorable matches with them, but you never really had that kind of record before. Because if you look at all the matches, probably Taker's like 1 win out of 10 matches with Lesnar in his whole career, and Lesnar has like over 8 or 9 wins. That's remarkable, and that kind of builds Lesnar up to something big.
Well, being the fact that we all saw the Taker-Lesnar match, and then we saw what happened after with the Wyatts, and then the next night on Raw, the Wyatts took out Kane. So does that lead to anyone thinking about a Survivor Series match? Being the fact Survivor Series is 2 weeks away, with a Team Taker versus Team Wyatt?
Yeah, I see it happening.
It does.
I'm
going to ask both of you guys. One question.
Yeah.
Who do you see being the last 2 members of Team Taker?
Well, let's look at the whole lineup. If there was supposed to be Team Taker versus Team Wyatt, we'd have Team Wyatt on one side, which would be composed of Braun Strowman, Bray Wyatt, Luke Harper, and Eric Rowan, which is 4. And then on the other side, you probably have Kane, probably Taker, and then who are the other 2 members?
So far.
Yeah. Orton, he recently got injured. Supposedly one time he was at home and he was trying to take out the garbage and boom, something happened there. And then the second
separated shoulder.
Yep, severe separated shoulder happened recently, and he's out of action. And we were talking about this at work. Does this open up a return for someone that has been injured before?
Or does this have a call-up?
Or maybe, another possible NXT call-up. The possibilities are endless. What would you guys say? Personally, I think, and I was talking about this with you, Rich. We were saying that probably Bryan would come back. And I think this is probably a good time because Kane is broken out from the Authority. Now you have Taker, Kane, and Bryan. Team Hell Knows reunited. I think that would be a great follow-up from that because now you can see them come back and reunite, and that would be something big. Hopefully jumping off the Yes Movement one more time.
Well,
what would you guys say?
The person I said, who I possibly see, is the current NXT champ. They might have him lose the title tomorrow at NXT, and then kind of like hint, like little vignettes leading up until Survivor Series, and then boom, he comes out, Finn Balor.
I
What do you
can't
say?
I can't see it happening because I think Balor holds on to the championship. He might give it up to Joe. I mean, because Balor and Joe are gonna end up feuding.
Probably right after.
Either he loses it to Joe or he loses it to Hideo Itami when he makes his return, which should be coming up soon, actually.
I think
So
him
that
and
gives,
Sammy
yeah,
both come back at the
that
end of
gives
the year.
NXT a lot of promise, as for their title picture. Balor being in that kind of match, that kind of spot would be cool as a way to introduce him. But I don't know, I wouldn't want him to get lost in the shuffle of a bigger Wyatt, kind of thing. And I wouldn't want to have Wyatt, lose to Balor like right away. I'd probably introduce Balor as on his
Rumble?
own, yeah, or maybe like the Rumble as a surprise entrant, something along those lines. But even then, I feel like Balor, a caliber of his kind of talent, he deserves a big intro, and in a way that won't end up with him like failing in any kind of way. Because if he comes up on this team and he loses to the Wyatt family, or he gets eliminated in the Royal Rumble, it'll be like, oh, cool, Balor's here, but yeah, he just lost. I don't think you
Well,
want
the
to
thing
do
with the
that kind of
Rumble,
thing.
the thing with the Rumble, I kind of see the NXT guys not winning, so you kind of expect the NXT guys to get eliminated, though.
I mean, this might be the first year that an actual NXT competitor, active NXT competitor, wins the Royal Rumble. Because, the opportunities are endless. I mean, we've seen in the past where straight up call ups, like Del Rio and Sheamus, they've won the Royal Rumble, being only 2 months fresh into WWE, 1 month fresh into WWE, and they
Yeah,
headline.
yeah,
But
but there's been a terrible pattern of Royal Rumble winners the last 2 years. They tend to be guys that Vince McMahon wants them to be quote unquote the guy, and it doesn't work
Yeah,
because fans
Reigns
just don't
loses at
get,
Mania.
yeah, they won't get
Batista,
behind
no
them.
one wanted him to win.
Yeah. So if I see anything happening with this Royal Rumble, I probably see Sheamus winning this one or something, some kind of dumb decision like that.
Well, me
You
and
might,
Sal
yeah.
talked about this in the previous shoot. I said it's probably between Cesaro and a returning John Cena.
I'm actually vouching for Brian to come back too, maybe, because I think WWE. I mean, in the same point, do they really want to bring Brian back this early when they can actually hold him off? Let's say for a pay-per-view like TLC or the Royal Rumble, build him up more, give themselves more revenue. That would I think make more sense for them, because I mean, has Brian really won a Royal Rumble? Not really. Cesaro, I mean, that's a really big name. We've talked about it in the previous podcast, like Rich
And
said.
he deserves the push.
He definitely does deserve it. I mean, everybody knows it. We all know it. We've all seen it. So we're all kind of thinking, like, okay, so he's just standing here in the middle of all this, and they're not giving him a push? That makes no sense. But, I mean, when you
And
talk
the
about...
only reason why I said Cena, because he said, I'll be back in 2 months.
Well, actually, they said he might be coming back a little bit earlier. He might be coming back around, what is it? Probably a month? Maybe, no, not even a month. Probably 2 weeks. Because he's doing a fitness reality show, supposedly. And it's supposed to be something big, quote unquote, they said. But we'll see what it is. Another thing.
I have a feeling he'll be back Rumble, surprise entry, win at Mania, tie Ric Flair's record.
It might. I mean, it might happen. I mean, obviously, a 16 championship is in the works probably. It will eventually happen.
Or
But
if they really want to do something that the fans will not expect, he comes back as a heel.
Yeah, that's not happening.
I doubt it. I highly doubt it. If you see Kevin Dunn and a Vince McMahon production they'll probably just look at that. They'll look at that Booker and they'll say, "Are you fucking crazy?"
You're fired.
Yeah, you're fucking fired. And then Kevin Dunn will have another thing etched into his tombstone saying, "You never made Cena heel," and that's I think the biggest mistake that they're making. I mean,
What's the closest thing to Cena being heel have we seen?
well, he had aggressive, right? He had aggressive moments. I mean, there was times where
The feud against The Rock, where he actually brought in the fact that The Rock has his promos written on his wrist. Is that the biggest heel thing Cena's done?
Or what about when he was supposed to turn heel in 2011? I think in 2012, something like that, with the whole what you call it, like the 6 months into the program with The Rock. That was going to be something they said, but that really didn't happen at all. I mean, another possibility that I'm really looking into, if you really noticed in the past few weeks, a big name in the indies, AJ Styles said he is considering coming back. Is coming to WWE. So that kind of brings something there. And I'm gonna be the one to say this. What if they have Cena and Styles at some point? It's kind of bizarre, I mean, at this point, but I think they can do that probably because one, it'll give exposure to AJ. Two, it'll kind of bring Cena to the light because Cena had feuds with many different people, but why not have it? Why not bring in someone? Why not go ahead and make Cena look different? Because if you've seen for example,
do you know who I would like to see Cena feud with? Samoa Joe.
I agree. I would. In that same dynamic. You've seen Joe. I mean, Joe and Cena, they go back a long time. UPW, before he was in WWE, they had a history. So why not? I mean, if you look earlier this year, the reason why I say Styles and Cena should happen is if you look at earlier this year when Owens came out, Owens and Cena, that was a pretty big deal, and it came for a really, really good match. Because when you saw that, you were like, that was a really, really good match. So why not? Why not? I mean, Owens at that time was a really, really good, really, really well-known name because people know him from the indie circuit, ROH, everything else.
He's a great heel.
He's a great heel indeed, and in the indie circuit,
who I see being a good heel? I think Samoa Joe is going to be a really good heel in NXT.
Plus the fact that he turned recently. I mean, that's definitely. I think that he's much better as a heel.
What are you saying, Nick?
He's got the intensity. Definitely.
To have a great heel run?
Huh?
To have a great heel run in NXT?
Yeah, he could definitely run roughshod. I mean, he could feud with Apollo, he could feud with Balor, he could feud with
Corbin.
No, Corbin's a heel, so I don't think they would go there. But
What if AJ comes back? I mean, AJ comes to NXT
as a face.
As a face, and then Joe is his obstacle. Because it's clear right now, if we see it, that WWE is really high on Joe right now. Not in the main roster, but in NXT. Because if you really think about it, if they bring up Finn, who's really left in NXT? It's for them to build it up. So
there'd be a Tommy, there'd be Zayn, and then you could just build it around the new.
Well, I think Zayn's going to come back to the main roster.
Yeah, I feel like Zayn, I mean, they were supposed to give him that push originally with that U.S. Open Challenge, but then he got injured.
Keep him up.
Yeah, and I think that was his whole, his call-up at that time. But, when you see, what about Hideo? Hideo's going to come back, and what role is he going to play? He was at the Japan, the Japan thing. So, are they going to do
Beast
anything?
In the East?
Yeah, the Beast in the East event.
I think the original reason why they were going to Japan, if you notice, that was the show where Finn Balor won the NXT Championship from Kevin Owens. I think the whole reason for the whole Japan show happening, that was supposed to be the time that Tommy was supposed to become champion, and he was going to be running NXT. Balor probably would have gotten a faster main roster call-up, but
it was just
I guess because of a Tommy
mishap.
Injured, they kept him, on this. And then an NXT title reign these days is never a bad thing. And then it's an easy way to keep the show going, while waiting for Zayn and Tommy to return.
Being the fact you just mentioned that, look at previous NXT champs. Look at what they've done after they won the title. Neville, Bo Dallas, Seth Rollins, Big E. They've all become big names on the main roster, with the exception of Bo.
But I think, WWE, they want to try to distance themselves from saying that, okay, if you're the NXT champion, that's the farthest you'll ever go, and the closest you'll ever be to the mid card, to the main roster is mid card, and I think that's what's really putting them in, because they don't want to have this stigma that, okay, every time someone that wins the NXT title, they're going to the main roster. That's all. I think that's been what's been going on now. But like if you see Joe, if Joe does win, that kind of causes a dilemma. Because if you really look at it, his deal with WWE was kind of restrictive on him. I mean, we on the outside might look at it as saying, oh, he's a former TNA guy. They'll never push him in the main roster. Because Vince, he has this whole thing against TNA guys and in the main roster and everything. But I mean, when you see that, that was kind of, that's kind of bring some people up to their feet and say, well, he's not going to the main roster, or is he? So that's kind of, I think that's what WWE is trying to do. Maybe not try to make the stigma that, okay, every NXT champion that we've ever had has gone to the main roster, no doubt, and they've had it within a short period of time. Because if you look at every single NXT champion, from the time that they were NXT champion to when they dropped the title, like from the time when they dropped the title to when they came to WWE to the main roster, like, how long was that period, How long was the period where they lost the title and went and debuted onto the main roster? Because if you look at, let's say, Neville, how long did it take him? He dropped the title to Zayn, and then, what was that, a month after? He ended up on TV.
Just about, yeah.
Yeah, and then if you look at who else? Owens, how long did it take him? He was showing up during that whole period. Yeah, he came up during the period.
Yeah, well, Neville, he was still featured on like the show after losing the belt, but he was called up I think the night after WrestleMania, which was maybe about a month or two after. Owens was actually like the first guy who was NXT champion to actually make his appearance on the main roster, and they kind of flirted with the idea of having him like on both shows, and then his success, he had all his success on his own, even despite his, detractors, they tried to point out his overweightness, but no one's going to deny him and Cena had 3 excellent matches, and I think that is ultimately why he is IC champion, but, it could be, they're not sure what to do with him. That's why they're having him in these feuds with Ryback, and I don't know where they're gonna go from there. But it would be cool to see Cesaro go for it again. Since he's an old like indie standout guy. But I just don't know if that's the route they're gonna take.
Well, being the fact you just mentioned indies.
Yeah.
Let's talk about ROH and how good they're doing right now.
Yeah, the ROH, the place where I like to call WWE's future main roster.
They are basically WWE developmental.
Yeah.
Yeah, more or less, without actually having that branding. But I think ROH is in a really good place right now. In terms of the in-ring product, I think it's got probably the best wrestling you're gonna see out of all 3 companies because they consistently deliver. Storylines usually don't make you scratch your head. Some of the booking decisions in terms of like who wins the matches and who loses, that is questionable. But for the most part, it seems like they have most of their
storylines are amazing.
Their wheels are geared up and ready to go. So far you got Adam Cole and the Kingdom, newly united, even though they never really were, split up. They were just using that as a way to fool Kyle O'Reilly into thinking, he had a shot. And then turning on him. Jay Lethal is television champion and Ring of Honor champion, is obviously doing great things for the company, to the point where WWE even wanted him. And then you got little things like the Dalton Castle Silas Young feud, which is actually pretty entertaining on its own.
Well, one feud I'm actually looking forward to, if it actually happens, is King Carino and BJ Whitmer.
Yeah, I mean that's been a pretty well pushed feud. I feel like it's dragged on a little bit too long to the point where the payoff moment is finally like, oh wow, he finally did it after like 2 years. I kind of like Carino as the commentator guy. Him and
Although I gotta say, that punch, no one saw it coming.
I think everyone saw it coming. It was totally building to that. Like I said before, I think Carino and Kevin Kelly are probably the best wrestling commentator team. So I'm a little bit sad that we're not gonna get that anymore. I don't know if the plan is to bring back Carino for like one last match. That seems to be the plan for like maybe some kind of like retirement match.
And it's probably
Then
gonna
maybe
be
he'll go back
for
to
Colby.
commentating. Or
And
yeah,
it'll probably be for Colby. If Carino wins, Colby leaves
yeah. I mean,
BJ.
that'll probably be the stipulation. I don't know like what event. I could probably see this going down for Glory by Honor on a Final Battle because Final Battle is the company's biggest show.
That's their WrestleMania, and it's a 2 night
Yeah,
thing, right?
yeah, essentially. Yeah, like in December, you build things up for a year, and that's usually how you do it. Except WWE does it in April and March, and then you go back and around again. But yeah,
Well,
I mean,
one group I'm actually surprised, as was everyone else. It was at their, what was their last show? Like their last
All Star
pay-per-view
Extravaganza 7.
at All Star Extravaganza on night 1. It was supposed to be uh, BJ Whitmer guys, uh, Adam Page, and someone else that was supposed to make their appearance. Both got injured, so they had to find a replacement. Out of nowhere, a old tag team who never lost their titles, the All Night Express, showed up out of nowhere. And that was just amazing because I loved them. They were a great team.
Yeah, I definitely think bringing them back was a good plan. Obviously, I think the shock value came from the fact that Kenny King has been a prominent talent on TNA this year, with the whole Beatdown Clan and then the X Division. He's been a face of that show.
And Red Titus has been MIA for 2 years.
Yeah. The other thing I feel like ROH hasn't done enough is really explain to us why did they get back together after so long? What happened to Red Titus? What do these guys really want? Any new viewers who aren't familiar with All Night Express, their previous run, they're probably thinking, oh, who are these guys? That nothing's really been explained about like what makes them like a truly cohesive unit. That's where like a hype video could come in or something along those lines. It's just it's something they could fix up in the future. But I actually think ROH gained a lot of momentum. With the recent signing of the Young Bucks, they've been a huge part of their. ROH has the best tag team wrestling, hands down, and Young
Being the
Bucks
fact you mentioned
an
that,
essential part of that.
Yeah, Rich, you were talking about this, right?
the way that they trolled every fan of where they were going to sign. They put on Twitter, like they basically put all the major promotions into one tweet. It was, we wonder what is our NXT move. Are we going to be on? Is it an honor to be a wrestling fan? To show how much our lucha skills is a non-stop action or something like that. So they basically trolled everyone with each brand, like each promotion of where they were signing.
Didn't
It
they
was just,
say?
it was just genius.
Didn't they? Wait, what was it? Trying to find this.
I
By
think
the
it
way,
was.
follow. Yeah. By the way, be sure to check us out on Facebook, on Twitter. Actually, we have our own Twitter handles. We're gonna put that downstairs too. But trying to find his tweet.
What I believe it
Oh
was
yeah,
was
right here. Sorry, yeah, it was what's NXT for us? No, what's NXT for us? We created this underground cult, like the following that impact wrestling anywhere. We honor to go. Announcement tomorrow.
Yeah, I saw a tweet before that one that kind of made it look like Young Bucks were gonna sign with Lucha Underground because they said something along the lines of the deal is done, announcements to come, and then like the guy who runs Lucha Underground, replied in a tweet was like, "Don't tease us" or something like that, and that's what made the rumor mill say like, "Oh, Young Bucks are signing with Lucha Underground," and then boom, it's like, "Oh no, they actually then now they're exclusively with ROH." So it's gonna be interesting to see like. I think they're finally gonna get their tag title push. Since they were loosely with the company, with the whole Bullet Club thing with NJPW. Um, they were contenders for the tag titles, but they probably couldn't win the belts. But now that they're with the company, sure, why
Well,
not give them a run?
well,
They're
right now, their first big match in ROH since the signing, it's the Bullet Club, which is the Young Bucks and Styles versus the House of Truths at Survival of the Fittest 15. That's
yeah,
their first big match.
it's gonna be good. You could just tell already. If like ROH has a knack of like making all these matches, like their whole roster, they'll just pit the whole roster against everybody, and the results are gonna be good no matter what you get. You could do
And
Young
this
Bucks
one
Red
actually,
Dragon. You could do Addiction Young Bucks. You could do Kingdom versus Red Dragon. You could
well,
take any of those teams.
this tweet actually had people thinking they were going to go to NXT because they're in a picture wearing a Bella Club shirt.
Oh yeah. That was another one too. Obviously that kind of didn't require words, but still made the impact that
Just by a shirt.
Yeah,
and
I
yeah,
mean, yeah, I mean, with ROH, I mean, I saw their Field to Honor pay-per-view, and they're pretty, that was a pretty solid show. It was in Brooklyn, the with
MCU Park.
the MCU Park where there's the games for the minor league baseball teams over there. It's a very very cool atmosphere. Once I saw that, I was that was actually my first time seeing an ROH pay-per-view. Like I've seen clips and highlights of certain pay-per-views, but this is like the actual thing where I saw it in full length from beginning to end, and I really enjoyed it because like you
Plus,
saw.
there were more matches that they didn't show on TV, though.
Yeah, I mean they taped that a couple of things there, but I
but
mean
yeah, I think the best match from those shows I think were probably the Roderick Strong Okada match. That was probably like one of my favorite ROH matches this year.
Yeah, Roddy puts on a great show anytime he fights.
Yeah, it's great. It's almost given.
He's Mr. ROH.
true. I mean there's a lot of great talent from there. The what do you call it? Addiction. I like what they're doing with everything over there that they're having going on there. What I like mostly was the way that they can bring in old talent, known from outside, and tie it in with whatever's going on now. They're like, I think that's the only thing they have the ability to do.
And I like the group that the Addiction has, the KRB.
Hmm.
It's them two and Chris Sabin.
Yeah, I think that's pretty badass. I mean, like, Chris Sabin has his own name in TNA. People know him from there. But yet, ROH doesn't really mention that. They don't really have to piggyback off of that. They can just go ahead and create something original off of that.
Well,
Just
speaking of that, remember with James Storm in his NXT debut? Where was he for the past 15 years?
TNA. But
In
WWE
the
kind of...
Indies.
He was on the indie scene for 15 years.
Yeah. And then they said, what'd you call it? He made his catchphrase. That was kind of a big fuck you to TNA, because that was a kind of total disregard for them. Because that's a whole, you run into copyright issues, you run into a whole bunch of other stuff, during that whole time period. But that
They
was,
made him keep his character, his catchphrases. The only
yeah,
thing
I
he
mean,
didn't use was just his finishers.
in Field to Honor, when you saw the Bushwhackers, I really liked that. That was really cool. He came out, he did his whole thing, he got eliminated. He eliminated himself, supposedly. Ran out, he just ran all the bases, and then it came out. That was pretty, like, oh man, like, it was entertaining. But, you get to
Like
see, okay.
Mark Briscoe, during the entrance, he jumped the gate and was with the fans.
Yeah, I remember that.
Would you see anyone else do that in professional wrestling?
No, not really. Because I think ROH can really they can really tie people in like the way WWE is, but they do it in a way where things they do it in a way where everything is they have that same basis. They're not kind of stabbing everybody in the back like WWE kind of did. They're kind of sticking to their roots, saying, okay, we're how we are, and this is what we do.
Definitely. They're definitely gonna take the future and build a lot of momentum towards it. And I think everyone just wins in the end. The fans win, the talent wins. Wrestling in general is as relevant as ever, and they're gonna work.
Especially now. I mean, with with Lucha Underground.
Yeah.
We can talk about that. Season 2, right?
Yeah, season 2 is going to be coming up. Obviously, for those who have followed season 1 and the greatness that it was, can't wait to see what's going to happen. Obviously, we won't have Del Rio on there, but Lucha Underground has a good way of, building up people. And, if you've missed any episodes or whatsoever, feel free to check out my site, ProWrestlingOpinion.com. We do a whole bunch of coverage on WWE, TNA, Ring of Honor, Pro Wrestling Syndicate, and Lucha Underground. You can see coverage and reviews of every single episode of that aired this past year. On that note, I think we're probably going to wrap this up. We touched up upon a good deal of fallout in WWE with Hell in a Cell, heading towards Survivor Series. We talked a little bit about ROH, what's happening next on NXT. November's going to be a pretty exciting month, and we haven't barely just scratched the surface of what's probably to come. I don't know about you guys, but I think we're going to be set for a pretty good month.
True. It's an interesting time in wrestling. A lot of things are happening on, and, there's a lot of stuff. By the way, be sure to check out. We're going to have our Twitter handles posted up on the Facebook site. We're also going to have a bunch of other stuff. Also, be sure to check out our YouTube page. You can also check out Pro Wrestling Opinion. Also, check out their Facebook page. Give us a like, give us a share, comment, subscribe. Be sure to leave any comments, suggestions, anything like that, comments, anything like that. And be sure to enjoy.
Just to give you like a little hint for our future podcast, be sure to look out for our podcast in December. It's going to be our biggest podcast ever. Probably going to be the best one we ever did. It's going to be kind of like the Slammy Awards. We're going to give out awards to Best Superstar, Best Diva, Best Feud, so on and so forth. So just keep an eye out for that.
There's going to be a cocktail, DJs, maybe some pyro.
A lot of stuff. We're also going to have, by the way, Star Wars. Might have, what's that guy's name? Fuck, I forgot his name.
Darth Vader?
Shockmaster. He's going to come out of nowhere. In tribute to Star Wars, Battlefront coming out. But we'll see from there. Be sure to enjoy. See you guys later, alright?
Adios.
Guys.
See you guys.